Hello and welcome back to Conan Exiles. This will be episode 2 of the Back to Basics Beginner's Guide. And in today's episode we're going to take a look at the basics of combat, so kind of introduce you to the different types of combat that you'll see early game, ways that you can do it, and also just a couple of different enemies to how they work for their mechanics, so you kind of get an idea of how to deal with them and what to watch out for, so that you're aware early on. And we'll also continue our journey, which our next little step, if you remember, we got down here onto the river. I've just moved across to the other side. When we last arrived we were just across here, and I've just come over to this flat little piece of land just over here because we need to progress our journey and get ourselves our little sort of starter base done. It doesn't necessarily need to be a building of such, because obviously this is single player. However, if you were playing on an official server or a community server with other players, you would want to make yourself a little building to keep your benches and boxes in and what have you, so that people can't access them. But as this is single player, one of the options you can do is literally just build yourself a little platform out of foundations to put your stations and things on, and also build yourself a little sandstorm shelter, which we'll get into right now. So as I say, we're going to continue our journey, and the first thing it wants us to do now, if we look at our journey steps there, is unlock the apprentice mason knowledge. So again, we bring up our menu, go to here, and then the one we want is that very first box there, which obviously didn't register because I was still using creative there. So be careful when you do that, because if you are using the creative mode through admin on single player, then it may not necessarily register that you've done that. But once you've done that, we bring up our hammer, and as we see sandstone, and we've got all these different bits and pieces. This is the amount of resource I've got here is to do with the materials that you would have on you. Now you can obviously do this in creative mode as well, but what I've done is I've been out and farmed a load of stone and a load of wood just to save us a bit of time, because otherwise we'd be here for a lot longer. So if we bring up our hammer and then we select our foundation, you can see there you get the ghost image, as you want to call it, and then the little arrow that you will see will determine the way that the piece faces. So at the minute that's facing away from us, and we can use L2 and R2 to change them around the direction. Then if I hit the down button on the directional pad and then hit L2, I can lower it, or R2 and we can raise it up a little bit, and then if we hit R1 we can place it like that. So then if we want to put one here, straight away the arrow's going the wrong way, so if we hit cancel so we can come out of it, go back onto the hammer, then if we use L2 we can change the direction for where we want our pieces to go, and you can start to place this down like this. So what I'll do is I'll get this little platform finished and I'll bring you back when we're ready to do the next bit. Okay, see you in a minute. Right, so fix that issue with the journey. If you do happen to click it in creative mode, because you have admin control, if you are in single player, what you can do is literally go back to your knowledge and hit triangle, which is reset, and then just do it again when you're not in creative mode, and then it should accept it. I'm not sure what you could do. Obviously on an official server you wouldn't have access to admin, so it shouldn't be an issue, but if that does happen to you on single player or your own server even, where you've got access to admin, then that's how to fix that one. Then the next bit of our journey, it wants us to cut down a tree with a hatchet, so we take our hatchet. Even though I've got the materials on me, I just want to show you what you do, just so that you know. That takes a little bit to do with a stone hatchet, but we've now done that one. And then it wants us to build a foundation, which is actually perfect timing, because what I've done here is As I say, I've put us a little platform down. I'm not going to bother with the building at this stage because it is single player, so nobody can get into any of our benches. But what we also need early game, another thing, is a sandstorm shelter. Because when the sandstorm mechanic comes along, which will come from that way, and blow across towards the jungle that way, we need a little shelter to be able to hide from it. Now, an easy way early game to do that is if you just literally place a foundation, like it wants us to do. Then we'll check our journey again. Then we need to do the next part, which is back to our menu again. Then we're going to pop a wall in like that. Then it wants us to do left one again. Bear in mind you might not have the same arcane sandstone pieces, you'll only have the sandstone door frame if you've got the base game. You won't necessarily have the other pieces unless you've been playing the game for a while and actually got them. Take a drink, use that. Back to our journey again. Build more walls. So I did one there and one there. Check our journey again. Now it wants us to build a ceiling piece, which early on is just a nice little flat ceiling piece like that. Build a door. So again, back to your hammer. And again, that's a doorway that comes with the sandstone pieces. You can see there, that's the arcane set that came out during sorcery, so you may not have this. You'll just have the simple wooden door, but it will still work exactly the same. So that is that particular part. So while we're at this point, the reason why we built that little box is because, as I explained on the previous episode, where the little tent is over there by the sentinels, how you can hide under that from shelter. If the sandstorm comes along, we can literally pop into here, close this door, and as you can see there, up on the top left, we now have the little bar that says sheltered, so we can stand in here, let the sandstorm pass over, and then when that's finished, we can pop back out and carry on with what we were doing. Looks like nighttime is shortly on its way. So I'm going to cut here and then I'll bring you back for the next bit. See you very soon. Right, welcome back. So we can now continue with our journey once again. Now it wants us to unlock the box maker knowledge. So once again we go back to our knowledge. And then you can go to this one here, box maker, click that. Access or place a wooden box. So again, using the hammer. But this time you want to use R2 to take us to here, and then again, and then storage, wooden box, and we're just going to place that there for the moment, and then it wants us to store something, so we'll open up the box, just pop that in a minute, just to show you how quick and easy that is. Straight away, that is that journey done. So that's another one complete. So we've done this one, which is Survivor. We've now done Survival Shelter, so we can claim that, which will give us a little reward pack again. Right, I'm going to unpack some of this stuff and then we'll look at the next bit. Right, welcome back. So that is the basics of that done. That's our little shelter, and we've also stored something. Again, if you play on an official server, you won't need to worry too much necessarily, because people won't be able to access your boxes, because these are automatically locked on server settings. But on single player or some community servers, if they have it set where people can access everything, you will get this option on your wheel that says lock. So now I could lock that. Now if somebody else came onto my single player and they weren't playing with me, they wouldn't be able to access that box, whereas if I left it unlocked then they would. But we don't need to worry about locking it on here because this is single player, so you've no worries with that side of things. So we are at level 10 now, which is the requisite or prerequisite as they call it that we need to be to access our next little bit of our journey, which is also to do with crafting stations, which we're going to need to start looking into because we'll need to do things like making bricks, which is done from stone, and also gathering some ironstone so that we can then smelt that in a furnace, which we need to craft to turn it into iron bars, which we'll then need to craft some of our other stations like our blacksmith bench and armorer's bench and other various benches that we will need, as well as lots of other resources as well, but we'll come to those as and when. So if we look at our list again, we can then click the pickaxe there, which we've already got, knife, and if we hover over this, the stone furnace, and you see on the right hand side there we'll now unlock the basic stone furnace, the basic blacksmith bench, iron and steel reinforcements, and some other bits and pieces, so we can unlock that. And then that will mean that if we go to our build hammer again, and then this time we want to go all the way back to this menu and down to smithing, which is this one. And as we can see, that's going to take stone to craft, which we have plenty of stone in our box. Hammer, crafting stations, smithing, hammer, right, and then we'll put this here for the moment. Now this will also need a fuel, and if you walk up to it, as you can see, it says press the irrelevant button to interact. So for us on console, that's square, and this is what you'll see with this station. So your menu on the right is your crafting menu, and anything that you set off to craft will appear in the crafting queue down at the bottom right there, and you'll see it in that list, and if it disappears it means it's finished. Then the central menu, the big lot of squares that you see, are the furnace's inventory space, and then just above that you have a square that says thrall on it. So in other words, this is where we can put one of our crafter friends once we get hold of one, but it's a very specific one, being that they are called a smelter, so you can't just put any thrall in here, it would have to be a smelter, and they just help you speed things up a little bit, and depending on the level that they are, depends on how good they are. So ideally we would want a named smelter eventually, but we'll get one of those hopefully further down the line. Then just above that, your play and stop button, so as soon as you put something in, you'd hit play on that. So as soon as we've got some iron or stone to go in here, we'll do that, and then I'll show you how that works. But it also needs a fuel. Now for the fuel, you could use branches or wood. Early game, if you get all these of those, you can use dry wood, which you can get from different sorts of trees, which we'll also talk about in a future video. But early game, your best options is definitely wood. So if you make sure that you farm plenty of wood, then you can just take it from your inventory, pop it into there, and as you can see, that's now got fuel. So that is ready for us to grab some iron to turn into iron bars. So we'll go and grab some of that, and then we'll see what that does for us in the furnace and show you how that works. So it's about to go night time, so I will cut here and then I'll bring you back when we get to one of the little spots early game where you can get some iron. Okay, see you in a minute. Right, welcome back. This is one of our first little spots that you can come to, and I've just come along the river here. Narroneck Span, I believe this is called, just under this bridge. You've also got some aloe that you can gather from here and some branches, so it's really helpful. And then you've got a little node of iron here, so to get this we need our pick, Bear in mind this is only a stone pick, so you're not going to get a lot. Even if you have it set on ×2, you're still not going to get a lot. So we can harvest that. We will also get, whoops, some stone as well. And if we run around this corner, and then if you look here, there's another little node of iron here. There are also attribute points that you can put in eventually that will help you reduce the amount of hits it takes to hit a node to harvest them, so it makes your harvesting more efficient, and also the better level of tool that you use excuse me, the more amount of resource that you will get. So again, if you cross back over the river, keep just along here. There are some areas where you can go and get an actual ton of iron really early game as well, but if you just need a little bit just to get you going, these are a good couple of little spots. Then you come around this corner here, keep this rock to your left, you'll see there's another spot again here. There's a mixture of stone and iron in that bit. I'm just going to drop the stone part of that because we don't need that at the moment. So if you climb up here, whoops, and slip back down, there's another one here. That's that one. And then if you're going from kind of where we're built at the moment, if you run back under the bridge, there are also one or two little spots all around the edges of the almost cliff face, I suppose, but it's more of a rock face. If you're feeling a little braver, which in a later video when we're seriously farming big resource for the bigger benches, when we're slightly further on in our game, not quite end game but a bit further on, there's a little camp just here that we'll go to that I'll also show you as well, where you can get 3 good little spots that will give you quite a lot of iron, but you would need a few more points to be able to carry it at this stage. But when you're just trying to get going on the very early stage, swim back around here, be careful because there is a crocodile. So this is the perfect opportunity actually to show you a bit of the combat. So with crocodiles, when they aggro, what they'll do is they'll do a snap like that. So if you just dodge around, they'll just lunge forward. Try and get a couple of attacks on them. Don't get overconfident yet till you've got a lot of points in your grit, so that gives you a bit more armor, and obviously your stamina, because if you try and do too much too soon, you'll run out of stamina and these guys will hit you. And they do kind of hurt a little bit early game, so it's all about just taking your time and watch what they do. So again, they lunge forward, you get a couple of attacks in. If you've got enough stamina to go again, but as you can see, if you go too long there, they can hit you a bit and it will hurt. So dodge back, let them do their snap, hit them again, and there we go. So that's with the crocodiles that you'll find early on. And they all attack the same way, so just be very mindful. As you can see that in this very basic clothing, if they bite you just a couple of times and you're extremely low health, if you haven't put any points into vitality as yet, you could almost end up dying, just as I nearly did. So then you need to heal up as much as you can, then once you're fully healed you're good. But if we go to our menu again, go back to our attribute points, we've now got some to spend because we are actually at level 10. We could have been spending these, but this is why I always say to people, try and get to at least your first perk in your vitality. And personally I'd try and get that one in expertise at first, just to give you where your hunger and thirst reduce a little bit slower, and it does also give you a tiny little bit of carry capacity again, not a lot but a little bit. And then if we carry on up here, like I say again, depending on whether you've got your harvesting amount set to the default or if you've upped it to ×2, you'll get a bit more, ×3, ×4, depending on how much you want to set it to. But again, just on this little ridge, bit of iron just there, and then if we come up around this one, These are a little hard. I say not harder to find, but you do have to kind of look around for them a little bit. But if you look all around this top level first, head up and around here, there should be another one just up on here. All around these edges, and then another thing you can do is check along this bottom ridge here. So the ironstone is pretty much a little bit easier to spot at times. You can sometimes miss it, but it's a little bit easier to spot in the sense that instead of this grey colour like all of this other stone is, you'll notice that it's a more bluey grey colour than the actual stone. So you'll find an odd few nodes around here early game, pretty much from there. Then you can work your way along here. You won't get a ton of it, like I say, early on, but it's enough just to hopefully get your first blacksmith bench going. So you can go along here, just keep an eye out as you're going, because it can be very deceiving. Like I said, you can end up missing it very easily. But there are one or two little different spots where you can get odd little bits. There are better locations where you can get a lot more than this. There is one a little bit further along that's even better. Once you've got a bit more encumbrance and you've actually got some decent armour on, to where that's probably your last node from around here now, but that should just be enough. That's stone again. It should be enough to get you going early on, just to at least get your blacksmith bench going. So we'll head back and then we'll have a look how we get the furnace going with the iron. So I shall meet you back at base. Right, so here we are back at base once again, and this is our furnace as we said. So we popped our fuel in, and if we find our ironstone, pop that in there, and then what we want to do is go to this play button here, hit play, and as you can see that now comes on. You can see the crafting queue working away at the bottom there. So that will now work away until all of that ironstone is turned into those iron bars for us. As you can see, that's lit up there. What you could do is build a second one if you want two going, so that you could have one turning brick, stone into brick at the same time. But really early on, one's just enough to kind of get you going. So you're pretty much set there with getting your iron going. Right, so I've still got some iron crafting away there, but once you've got enough, depending on what you've got your crafting cost set to, unless you've left it at official, then as you can see there, we've now got enough iron, and I picked up some stone from the box. So we've got blacksmith bench, so we're going to pop this in this corner here, right about there for the minute. I'll worry about neatening it up after. Well, there we go, that is our basic blacksmith bench, and once again we can interact with this. And again, your middle menu where it says thrall, that's for your blacksmith to go in, which are one of the professions that we'll look at down the line. And again, the squares underneath are the inventory space, and then your play button for ensuring that the bench actually works when you select something. And then the menu on the right hand side are all your tools or weapons that you've unlocked so far, that if you're at the iron stage will all be your iron tools and iron weapons that you have unlocked that you can craft. And what these will do is these will show you what it needs to craft a certain item. So like for a pick, for example, there it will show you that it requires different resources, and the better or the better level that the item is, the more resources it will require. So if it's a basic iron tool, it would be things like branches and iron bars, and all you do is pop the items into the inventory space for the bench there, so branches and your iron bars, and then click it on the right hand side and it'll pop it in the crafting menu at the bottom right. So I'm going to wait for this iron to do, so that we've got enough, grab some branches, and I'll bring you back when we're ready to make some iron tools. So again, now to get some iron tools, before we can see those in our menu, what we need to do is go back to our knowledge once again and unlock iron tools. And then we go to our bench, and as we can see here, we have iron hatchet, iron pick, iron sickle available at the moment. We need to unlock the skinning knife yet, but we've got the 3 main tools just there, so we're going to craft those. So we haven't got quite enough iron ready at the moment to make our sickle, but by getting the iron pick and the iron hatchet, these will obviously allow us to gather a little more resource when we go out gathering our materials. So the hatchet will give us more wooden branches from the trees, and the pick will give us more stone or iron when we go to harvest those. So that is pretty much the basic blacksmithing, which starts us out there, and then our basic furnace, which is getting the ironstone turned into iron for us. And then if we look back at our knowledge again, we can see we can also unlock a carpenter's bench, and also a tannery. So we'll unlock those, because these again are 2 different benches that you would need for different items again, which again are crafted with the hammer, and they are alphabetical. So as we can see there, carpenter's bench, we're going to need more wood and stone. So this is why it's really important to farm up a lot of wood and stone early on, because you're going to need it for your first couple of stations. Pop it there for the moment, just till we decide on a proper place for it, but just to show you. So once again, this is the carpenter's bench, which, similar to the blacksmith, once again has an inventory space and a space for a thrall, which in this case is a carpenter. And then you'll unlock various items on the right hand side as you go along of items that you can craft. So you'll have shaped wood there. Eventually we'll unlock insulated wood as we progress in our builder side of the journey, and other different bits and pieces as you unlock them will be in that menu on the right hand side, and once again the crafting queue down at the bottom. So the final one we're going to look at for today is strangely under smithing again, but that's the tannery. And as you can see, the requirements for that is wood and stone once again, but we also need some bark. So we do have some in here. Might not be enough, so we'll have to check. Nope, we need a bit more. Bark you can obtain from trees, and all you do to get bark from a tree is again use your pick, and rather using the hatchet. Of course, this is why I'm over encumbered again, because of carrying so much stuff. Again, this will be better with the iron pick once it's ready, but if you've only got the stone one at this stage, you'd have to use that. Yeah, we're going to need a bit more. So it will take you a bit if you are weighed down like this, if you're carrying all your resources around with you while you're going, but this just gives you the basic idea of obviously how it would be early on if you haven't got any points into your expertise yet, which is essentially your encumbrance bar, if you will, which allows the amount of stuff you can carry. A lot of people will recommend that you do spec into those particular skills at first. Don't worry about specking into a combat build, but focus more on this and vitality early game, so that you've got a little bit of decent survivability, but also enough so that you can obviously carry your resources around by a much more efficient way than having to do it like this. There is armour that you can craft quite early on, which we'll look at doing in our next episode, which is only going to be very, very basic because we don't have a crafter to make yet, but we will need resources to craft that. We're going to need lots of twine. We'll also need some hide, which we get from various animals and creatures around the map. So we'd have to go and kill some of those to get ourselves some hide to turn it into leather. So if I just pop this here a moment. So this is the basic version of our tannery. Exactly the same again. Crafting queue down the bottom right. Play and stop button at the top. Again, this can also take a thrall or a crafter, which is called a tanner. And we'll discuss all of these when we come to actually needing people for these benches. But once again, you've got the crafting queue. Now, unlike the blacksmith bench that doesn't require a fuel to work, this one is like the furnace, it does. And the fuel you can use for a tannery is just your bark. So any bark that you got left over, you pop that in there. And as we'll see in our armor crafting guide, you pop hide in there to turn it into leather. But we will look at that when we come to making our armor. So that is pretty much our basic little start. So we've got our little base set up, we've got our campfire for our food, we've got our storage, we've got a space to hide in from the sandstorm when that comes along. We can start making our iron bars, use our blacksmith to turn them into tools, and then we've had a quick sneak peek at the blacksmith carpenter rather, which is another bench that we will need going forward. So that's the basics for getting a base up and running. So we'll just take a look at now one more quick tip for combat when it's going against things like the shaleback, for example. Right, so as I say, the shaleback are mostly passive. There are one or two that are a slightly darker colour and have, I think it's a red coloured horn on their head. They are called the aggressive males, and they will hiss at you or growl at you and then run at you and try and attack you. Whereas the majority of them that you'll see around the map, certainly on the desert area and here on the river, are passive, so they will not attack you unless you attack them. And their attack patterns are fairly simple. So if we hit this guy, he will then growl, he'll do a stomp like that, which is one attack they'll do. So you can get 2 or 3 hits. Another one they'll do is a swipe like that, and that's pretty much all they'll do. They'll do the overhead pound, or they'll just keep trying to slap you with one of their front legs like that. Let him hit me so you can see that again. Not huge amounts of damage, but if you're in the basic clothing like we are, they will hurt a little bit. But then that's him defeated. Now if you want a bit more meat from them, use a hatchet at first, so if you've got a cleaver, use a cleaver. But if you want the hide from them, which we do, then you want to take your stone skinning knife, which will give us hide that we need, which we will need the hide to craft some basic starter armor, which we'll look at in the next episode. So if you want to know how to do that, stick around. So that is your basic combat for crocodiles and shalebacks, which are pretty much the simple enemies that you will come into contact with when you first start the game. Right, well that's going to just about do it for today. If you are new around here and you haven't got a clue what we're talking about, then there will be a link for episode 1 on the screen. Go check that video out and then you'll be up to date with what we're on about. And then you can also, why not consider subscribing while you're around, leave a like if you enjoy this, leave a question or a comment down below. And until the next episode, I hope you enjoyed the game, hope you found these tips useful, and we'll see you in episode 3.